The observatory sat quietly on the edge of a remote desert, its tall telescopes reaching like fingers toward the endless sky. Most nights it was calm, the scientists watching distant stars and planets, tracking movements no one else could see. But tonight was different. Tonight, something unusual had appeared on their screens. Dr. Ali, a young astronomer with a quiet intensity in his eyes, was the first to notice the pattern. At first it seemed like static, random noise from deep space. But as he adjusted the instruments and ran the signals through advanced filters, a strange clarity emerged. The noise wasn't random at all. It repeated in sharp pulses and sequences. Ali's heart raced as he ran a second analysis. This was no ordinary cosmic signal. It had structure. It had purpose. It was artificial. "Get everyone in here," Ali said, his voice low but urgent. This isn't just interference. It's a message." Within minutes, the observatory was alive with activity. Scientists hurried to check and double-check the data, while communications officers confirmed the anomaly with other observatories around the world. The signal was real. It was coming from a galaxy far beyond anything humanity had ever visited, and the content of the message sent chills down every spine in the room. The signal was a distress call. It was strange and beautiful in a way no one could describe. The patterns carried a rhythm that suggested intelligence but also desperation. As the world watched in disbelief, the message began to be decoded. Simple mathematical patterns revealed a clear plea. Help, attacked. We cannot survive alone. Governments around the world quickly convened emergency meetings. Leaders, scientists, and military strategists gathered in secure locations, their faces tense. They had never faced anything like this before. For centuries, humans had wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now the universe was speaking to them, and it was asking for help. The debate was immediate and heated. Some argued that responding was too dangerous. Humanity's technology was advanced, but compared to interstellar civilizations, it could be primitive. Sending a fleet might be a heroic gesture, or it could be a suicidal one. Others said that ignoring the call would be a moral failure. If another civilization was pleading for help, could humanity live with itself knowing it did nothing? Amid the discussions, one thing became clear. If Earth wanted to respond, it had to act fast. The message indicated that the alien species, later called the Tarlix, was under attack by a powerful enemy known as the Zarkons. They had superior numbers and terrifying weapons that could annihilate entire cities in seconds. Time was critical. Every hour that passed could mean the difference between life and total destruction. To coordinate a response, a council of Earth's top military leaders, scientists, and diplomats was formed. They worked together to prepare the war fleet. This was no ordinary fleet. Years of research and engineering had gone into building ships equipped with advanced weaponry, AI navigation systems, and experimental shields designed for deep space combat. The fleet was humanity's first true attempt at projecting power beyond the solar system. On the morning of the launch, the world watched as massive ships rose from their docking bays, engines roaring, leaving trails of fire and smoke. Pilots suited up, engineers made last-minute checks, and families watched from screens across the globe. There was fear in every heart, but also hope. This mission was more than a military operation. It was humanity's first step into a larger universe, a moment that would define generations. Admiral Reyes, a veteran of countless space missions, stood on the command bridge of the lead ship. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the weight of responsibility. Every decision he made in the coming days could mean life or death for both his crew and the Tarlix. He addressed the fleet not with orders, but with words meant to steady hearts. "We do not know what awaits us. But we know this: we will face it together with courage, with intelligence, and with compassion. Humanity will answer this call." As the fleet left Earth's orbit, it passed familiar satellites, the moon, and the sun's shimmering light. Beyond the solar system, the vast darkness of space stretched endlessly. Stars sparkled like distant lanterns, beautiful and indifferent. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of engines and the quiet voices of crews checking systems and adjusting trajectories. During the long journey, the crew had time to reflect. Young pilots, barely old enough to hold command of their ships, stared out at the stars and wondered what they might encounter. Engineers discussed the technology they had helped create, proud yet anxious to see it tested. Scientists worked tirelessly to better understand the Tarlix signals, decoding language patterns and cultural nuances from mere sequences of numbers and pulses. One evening, a young communications officer named Lena sat alone in the observation deck watching the stars streak past. She thought about the message they had received and the lives at stake millions of light years away. The Tarliks were real and they were in danger. She had read reports of civilizations destroyed in seconds by forces far stronger than themselves, and now, in a way she had never imagined, humanity was part of that story. Ali, the astronomer who had first discovered the distress call, joined her. "Do you ever think about what it means?" he asked quietly. "That we're leaving our home, our planet, to help a species we've never met?" "I do," Lena replied. "And I think it's the right thing to do. We've spent our lives looking at the stars, wondering what's out there. Now we have a chance to actually make a difference." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the command deck. Sensors had picked up unusual energy signatures ahead. The fleet was entering the outer edge of the Tarlik system. The signs of destruction were subtle at first. Small debris fields, ships drifting aimlessly, but they were unmistakable. The Tarliks were under attack and the Zarkons were close. Admiral Reyes called a meeting with his senior officers. They pored over maps, sensor data, and simulations, preparing for the first contact with the Tarliks. They knew the enemy was far stronger in numbers and firepower, but they also knew humanity had one advantage: creativity. The fleet could use cunning, strategy, and the combined intelligence of both humans and AI systems to even the odds. As the fleet approached the Tarliks' homeworld, the first glimpses of the devastation came into view. Cities that might once have glimmered like jewels in the night sky now lay in ruins. Smoke and fire marked the streets, and structures designed for alien beauty were twisted and broken. The Tarlik ships that had survived hid near planetary rings, their movements cautious and desperate. Lena, Ali, and the rest of the crew realized the gravity of what they were facing. This wasn't a training exercise. This wasn't a simulation. Every life they saw, every motion they observed was real, and they were humanity's first ambassadors to a galaxy that was far larger, stranger, and more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. Admiral Reyes addressed the fleet once more as they entered orbit. "This is our moment," he said, his voice steady and calm. "We are not invaders. We are allies. We are here to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Remember that in every decision you make. Today, humanity will step into the wider universe, and we will do so with honor." The fleet held position, engines humming softly, as they prepared to respond to the distress call. The Tarliks watched from below, wary and fearful, yet hopeful. And somewhere in the endless dark, the Zarkons were waiting, unaware that Earth's warfleet had answered a call that would change the fate of a galaxy forever. As the first part of their journey came to a close, the crew of the fleet settled into their stations. Every pilot, engineer, and officer knew the challenges ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. But they also understood that this mission was bigger than fear. It was a chance to prove that courage, intelligence, and compassion could cross the boundaries of space, uniting species and shaping destinies. And in the quiet moments, when the hum of the engines was the only sound, each of them gazed out at the stars and wondered, what would it take to save a civilization light years away? And what would they discover about themselves along the way? The warfleet moved slowly but steadily through the vast emptiness between stars, each ship a symbol of humanity's determination. Inside the ships, life was a mix of routine and tension. Every day, engineers checked engines, weapon systems, and shields, making sure that nothing failed at a moment when failure could mean death. Pilots practiced maneuvers in virtual simulations, going over attack and defense strategies again and again. And scientists worked tirelessly to decode more of the Tarliks' messages, hoping that understanding them could give Earth an advantage in the days ahead. Captain Rahim, a seasoned officer in charge of the reconnaissance squadron, walked along the main deck of the fleet's flagship. He paused frequently, observing the crew at work. Many of them were young, barely old enough to remember the early days of space exploration. Their excitement was clear, but so was the fear. They were leaving the safety of Earth for the unknown, traveling to a galaxy that no human had ever set foot in, and for a mission that could decide the fate of an entire alien civilization. In one corner of the ship, a group of communications officers huddled around a glowing console. The Tarlik signals were becoming clearer, and patterns were emerging that suggested something more than a simple call for help. There were coordinates, repeated sequences, and even references to safe zones and weak points in the enemy's forces. Every discovery brought relief and anxiety at the same time. Relief because it meant the Tarlix could be helped more effectively. Anxiety because every detail also revealed how dire their situation really was. Among the officers, Lena sat quietly, analyzing the data on her screen. She had been part of the first team to detect the distress signal months ago, and now she found herself far from Earth, staring at symbols and sounds she barely understood. Slowly, patterns began to make sense. She noticed a rhythm in the signals, almost like a heartbeat, that seemed to match the movement of the Tarlix ships. It was subtle, but it suggested that the aliens were not only sending coordinates, they were sending guidance, trying to lead the fleet safely through the debris and enemy patrols. "Look at this," she said, calling over Ali, the astronomer who had discovered the message. "They're giving us a path through the system. They want us to follow, but they're also warning us where danger is." Ali studied the screen. "It's amazing," he said softly. "Even in desperation, they're thinking strategically. They're not just asking for help, they're working with us." As the fleet continued its journey, engineers ran tests on new weapon systems designed for deep space combat. The ships carried energy shields that could absorb enormous amounts of fire, and weapons capable of targeting enemy vessels with pinpoint accuracy across thousands of kilometers. But these were experimental systems, and there was no way to know if they would perform as intended against the Zarkons. Every test, every adjustment was critical. A single malfunction could turn a brave mission into a disaster. Meanwhile, the pilots prepared for the possibility of immediate engagement. Young cadets studied star charts and battle simulations, imagining themselves maneuvering through alien ships, dodging energy blasts, and protecting the Tarlix fleet. For many, it was the first time they had considered that they might have to kill to survive, or to save others. The reality was sobering, and yet there was no room for hesitation. In space, hesitation could be fatal. Admiral Reyes called a meeting with the senior officers. They gathered around a holographic table, the 3D image of the Tarlix system floating above them. Debris fields marked destroyed cities, and the shadows of enemy ships loomed near planetary rings. "We need to move carefully," Reyes said. "The Zarkons are stronger in numbers and firepower, but we have strategy and intelligence. We also have the opportunity to form an alliance with the Tarlix. That is our strength. We protect them and they guide us. Any decision we make now will define this mission." He paused, letting the weight of the moment sink in. "We are not just fighting for survival. We are showing that humanity is capable of courage, intelligence, and compassion on a galactic scale." The officers nodded, understanding the gravity of their roles. The fleet moved in formation, each ship covering the others. The reconnaissance unit scanned ahead for enemy patrols, while the heavy assault ships provided a strong backbone. Engineers monitored the shields, adjusting energy flows to ensure they could withstand sustained attacks. Even the smallest crew members had a role, from maintaining life support to keeping communication lines clear. Every person mattered. As they approached the outer edge of the Tarlix system, the first signs of enemy activity became visible. Sensors detected faint energy signatures moving with purpose. The Zarkons were scouting, looking for weaknesses. They were fast, and they had weapons that could pierce even the strongest human shields. The fleet's AI systems began analyzing patterns, predicting the enemy's moves, and suggesting strategies. It was a game of numbers and logic, but the human element was crucial. No machine could fully understand the unpredictability of combat, or the emotions that drove the crew to act beyond the expected. Lena and Ali worked together to communicate with the Tarlix. Using the patterns they had decoded, they transmitted messages of reassurance explaining that the fleet was there to help. Moments later, responses came back, cautious but hopeful. The Tarlix were frightened, but they were still willing to trust humanity. For the first time, the crew felt the fragile threat of an alliance forming. In the midst of preparation, small moments of humanity shone through. A young engineer shared a simple cup of tea with a pilot, both laughing nervously at the absurdity of drinking tea while floating in a zero-gravity corridor. Others wrote messages to their families back on Earth, knowing that they might never return, yet needing to leave a trace of themselves behind. These quiet moments reminded everyone that they were not just soldiers or scientists, they were human beings. Facing the unknown together, the fleet moved closer to the Tarlix homeworld, and the scale of the destruction became undeniable. Cities that might have once glowed with light and life now lay in ruins. Energy weapons had carved wide swaths of devastation through the surface. Tarlik ships moved cautiously, trying to avoid confrontation while evacuating survivors. It was a sobering sight, one that strengthened the resolve of the human crew. They were not here for glory. They were here to save lives. Captain Rahim walked through the command deck, observing the crew as they coordinated maneuvers. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination. Every command, every adjustment, every decision mattered. The pilots were ready to act, the engineers had strengthened every system, and the scientists were prepared to provide guidance whenever possible. They were as ready as humanity could be. Admiral Reyes addressed the fleet once more before entering the Tarlik system. His voice carried over every channel, calm but firm. Remember this, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for lives that cannot fight for themselves. Our actions will define not only this mission, but humanity's place in the galaxy. Move with caution, act with courage, and trust one another. The world is watching, but the universe is even larger. We answer a call that no one else could. Let us prove that we are worthy. As the fleet entered orbit, the Tarlik sent scouts to meet them. The first encounters were tense. The aliens were cautious, their movements hesitant, their communication precise. But slowly trust began to form. Earth's fleet was no longer just observers. They were participants, allies, and protectors. In quiet moments, crew members reflected on what had brought them here. Some thought of home, of the planet that had nurtured them. Others thought of the billions of people who relied on their courage. And some, like Lena and Ali, thought of the Tarliks themselves, the frightened, desperate beings whose lives now depended on humans they had never met. The story of the fleet's journey was only beginning. The first steps of strategy, alliance, and preparation were in place. The Tarliks were alive, but the threat of the Zarkons loomed closer with every passing moment. The crew knew that battles would come, choices would need to be made, and sacrifices were inevitable. But they also knew that this mission was larger than any one of them. It was humanity stepping into the unknown, answering a call for help from across the stars, and proving that courage and compassion could transcend worlds. As Part 2 came to a close, the fleet held position near the Tarlik system, engines humming softly, shields at full strength, and every crew member alert. The unknown stretched before them, filled with danger, mystery, and possibility. And in the quiet hum of the ships, each person felt a deep sense of purpose. They were no longer just travelers, they were saviors, ambassadors, and the first human presence in a galaxy that would never forget them. The Tarliks watched from below, fragile yet hopeful. They had seen the devastation caused by the Zarkons and had almost given up hope. But now, with humanity's fleet in orbit, there was a chance, a real chance to survive, rebuild, and fight back. And somewhere in the vast darkness, the Zarkons waited, unaware that the humans they underestimated were already shaping the first moves of a battle that would echo across the stars. The fleet had entered the Tarlik system, and the vastness of space no longer felt empty. Every sensor, every monitor, every crew member's eyes were fixed on the alien world below. The devastation was more profound than anyone had imagined. Cities once alive with alien light and movement were now nothing but ruins. Smoke rose from shattered structures, and the remnants of alien ships floated silently in orbit, like ghosts of a civilization under siege. From the flagship's observation deck, Lena pressed her forehead to the glass, trying to take it all in. The Tarliks were humanoid, yes, but different in almost every way. Their skin shimmered with a faint glow under the light of their sun, and their eyes reflected intelligence and fear in equal measure. Many moved cautiously on the ground, avoiding areas of destruction. Some still clung to their damaged ships, unsure if they could trust the humans who had just arrived. Ali joined her, his face pale. "It's worse than the reports suggested," he said quietly. "And yet, they're still here. They haven't given up." Lena nodded. "That's why we're here. They need us. Every second we wait could cost them everything." Admiral Reyes gathered the senior officers in the command room. Holographic images of the Tarlik cities floated in the air, showing the patterns of destruction. "Our priority," he said, "is to establish contact safely and assess their situation. We are allies, not invaders. We will protect their civilians, assist their military, and find a way to push back the Zarkons. But we need to move carefully. One wrong step could make things worse." The first contact team suited up and prepared to descend to the surface. Their ships were small, designed for rapid maneuvering and to carry only essential personnel. Each pilot knew the risks. Debris fields, unexploded energy weapons, and potential Zarkon patrols could appear at any moment. The goal was simple but critical: reach the Tarlix leaders, understand their needs, and establish trust. As the first team approached the planet, the view of the cities became more horrifying. Buildings that once reached high into the sky were now twisted metal and broken glass. Streets were torn open, leaving gaping scars across the landscape. Fires burned here and there, stubbornly refusing to die. But in the midst of destruction, there were still signs of life. Small groups of Tarlix moved cautiously, tending to the injured, clearing debris, or trying to communicate with the newcomers from Earth. One Tarlix, taller than a human with shimmering blue skin and long, delicate limbs, approached the landing site. It raised a hand in a cautious greeting, and the team returned it. This first encounter was tense. Language was nearly impossible to understand directly, but thanks to the prior decoding of signals, basic communication was possible. Simple phrases and gestures conveyed the message: help, guidance, and trust. Lena and Ali worked furiously to establish a reliable channel. "We need to know where the survivors are concentrated," Lena said. "We also need to identify Zarkon threat zones before we move more ships in." Ali nodded. "They're pointing out areas that are safe, but it's limited. We have to be careful. Every movement could be tracked by the enemy." Meanwhile, on the fleet, engineers monitored sensors for signs of Zarkon activity. The enemy was near, but so far they had not engaged. It was unclear whether this was a reconnaissance probe or a trap. Every crew member understood the tension. The calm of space was deceptive. Danger could appear in a heartbeat. As teams moved into the cities, they witnessed firsthand the resilience of the Tarlix. Despite their fear, they worked tirelessly to save each other. Children were led to safer areas, and elders were helped across debris-laden streets. Their efforts were precise and coordinated, even though they had lost much of their infrastructure. For the humans observing, it was a mixture of awe and sorrow. These beings were under attack and yet still cared for one another, showing strength in the face of despair. Captain Rahim led a small reconnaissance unit to a partially intact command center. They hoped to find Tarlix leaders there. Inside, the building was battered, with walls scorched and communication equipment broken, but holographic displays flickered weakly, showing maps of the city's enemy movements and evacuation plans. It was clear that the Tarlix had been organized and strategic before the attack, but the Zarkon's assault had overwhelmed them. As the humans began helping repair systems and establish communications, the Tarlix slowly started to trust them. They showed the humans where survivors were hiding, where the most dangerous enemy forces were likely to appear, and even shared tactical information about their own limited fleet. It was the start of a fragile alliance, built on necessity but growing into mutual respect. Back in orbit, Admiral Reyes and the senior officers coordinated with the teams on the ground. "Every piece of information we get is critical," Reyes said. "We need to map Zarkon movements, strengthen Tarlix defenses, and prepare for potential engagement. We are here to protect them, but we must anticipate the enemy." The crew also had moments of human connection. Lena helped a young Tarlix child reach a safe zone, calming her with gestures and simple phrases until she understood that humans were there to help. Ali worked with Tarlix engineers, sharing knowledge about energy distribution and shielding, even as he marveled at their advanced technology. These interactions reminded everyone that, beyond the war and destruction, there was a chance to build something lasting, a bridge between two very different species. As night fell on the Tarlix world, the fleet maintained position in orbit, engines glowing softly. The first contact had been successful, but it was only the beginning. Sensors detected distant energy signatures, small groups of Zarkon ships scouting the system. They were observing, calculating, and waiting. The humans and Tarlix knew the real challenge was coming. In the quiet of the observation deck, Lena spoke to Ali. "We've done what we can for now," she said. "But this is only the start. They're scared, and they're relying on us. We have to be ready for what comes next." Ali nodded. "And we will be. Humanity is here, and we're not leaving them. Whatever the Zarkons throw at us, we'll face it together." As dawn approached on the Tarlix world, The humans could see signs of small victories. Fires had been contained in some districts, debris cleared enough to allow for movement, and survivors were starting to organize under human guidance. It was a fragile hope, but it was hope nonetheless. Admiral Reyes addressed the fleet. "We've made first contact, established trust, and begun protecting the Tarliks. But we are not out of danger. The Zarkons are still out there, and we must be ready to act. Our mission is clear: defend, assist, and prepare for the confrontation ahead. Humanity is not just a visitor in this system. We are allies, and we will prove it." The fleet moved closer to strategic points identified by the Tarliks. Reconnaissance units scanned for enemy activity. Assault ships positioned for defense, and communication teams worked tirelessly to maintain coordination. Every movement was calculated, every decision weighed against risk and potential reward. For the crew, the experience was overwhelming. They had traveled light years from Earth, entered a foreign system, and faced destruction they could barely comprehend. Yet in the midst of fear and uncertainty, there was purpose, courage, and determination. Humanity was no longer on the sidelines. It was actively shaping the events of a distant world, standing with a species in peril, and preparing for a conflict that could define the fate of an entire galaxy. As Part 3 ended, the humans and Tarliks worked side by side, cautious but united. The enemy was near, the stakes higher than ever, and the coming days promised both danger and the possibility of heroism. Every crew member understood that they were part of something larger than themselves, a story of survival, alliance, and the beginning of humanity's role in the galactic theater. In the quiet moments, as stars shimmered through the observation windows, the humans looked out at the Tarliks world, knowing that the first step of saving a civilization had been taken, but they also knew that the real test was still to come. And somewhere in the darkness beyond, the Zarkons were watching, calculating, and preparing to strike. The calm before the storm lasted only a few hours. Sensors on the fleet detected faint blips moving toward the Tarlik system. Small at first, but growing steadily. Admiral Reyes watched the readouts carefully, his face unreadable but his mind racing. "They're coming," he said simply. "Prepare for engagement. Every crew member, every ship, every weapon system. Ready yourselves. The Zarkons are here." The first contact with the enemy was chaotic. From orbit, the human fleet could see the Zarkons' ships, sleek, black, and menacing, gliding through space with deadly precision. They moved like predators, coordinated and relentless. The Zarkons outnumbered the humans and the Tarliks combined. But Earth's fleet had one advantage: planning, coordination, and determination. Captain Rahim led the reconnaissance squadron to scan enemy formations. The pilots maneuvered with intense focus, weaving between asteroids and debris fields, avoiding detection while relaying critical data to the command center. Every second mattered. If they were discovered too soon, the Zarkons could focus their fire and destroy key vessels before the humans had a chance to react. On the ground, the Tarliks watched nervously. Their forces were damaged and depleted, but they moved with courage, following the humans' instructions to evacuate civilians and secure strategic points. They had begun to trust humanity, and in this moment that trust was crucial. Fear was tempered by hope. Admiral Reyes activated the fleet-wide communications. "Remember your training. Stay in formation, protect one another, and watch the civilians. The enemy is strong, but we are stronger together. This is our first battle, and we will face it with skill, courage, and unity." The first exchange of fire was sudden and terrifying. The Zarkons launched energy projectiles that streaked across space like bolts of lightning. Human shields flared to life, absorbing the hits and deflecting debris. Explosions illuminated the darkness, casting shadows across the fleet's sleek surfaces. The soundless vacuum of space made the visuals surreal. Flashes of color, sudden bursts of light, and the precise movements of ships as they dodged, countered, and struck back. In the flagship's command room, Lena monitored enemy patterns. "They're using swarm tactics," she reported. "Small, coordinated groups hitting from multiple directions. They're testing our formation, trying to find weak points." Ali nodded. "We can predict some movements, but they're adaptive. Their AI and strategies are sophisticated. We need to keep changing our approach or they'll find a way to break through." Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Rahim barked orders. Pilots executed daring maneuvers, threading between the enemy ships and debris fields. They used the Tarliks' data to anticipate ambush points and avoid traps. Every move was precise, calculated, and dangerous. Young cadets who had trained only in simulations now found themselves in the heat of real combat. Fear and adrenaline mingled, but so did courage and determination. The Zarkons were relentless. They focused on the human reconnaissance ships first, trying to gather information and disrupt communication lines. Explosions rocked the smaller vessels and alarms blared across the fleet. Crews worked tirelessly to repair shields, redirect power to weapons, and maintain communications. Every second mattered. Every life mattered. On the ground, the Tarliks coordinated with human advisors to evacuate civilians from vulnerable zones. The humans had trained them quickly, teaching them simple protocols to avoid being caught in crossfire. Children, elders, and families were moved to safer areas, while small squads of Tarliks and humans prepared defensive positions. The Tarliks were nervous, but the presence of the humans gave them courage. They were no longer alone. Amid the chaos, heroes emerged. A small human squad infiltrated a Zarkon assault ship using stealth technology. Their mission was daring: disable the ship's primary weapon before it could destroy critical human and Tarliks vessels. The tension was unbearable. The team moved silently, hearts pounding, knowing that any mistake could mean immediate death. Using ingenuity and courage, they bypassed the enemy systems, planting explosives and transmitting the sabotage codes back to the fleet. Moments later, the enemy ship's weapon systems failed, sending ripples of relief through the command center. Back in orbit, the battle raged on. Human and Tarlik ships used combined tactics, merging technology and strategy to outmaneuver the enemy. Energy beams clashed in dazzling displays, shields shimmered under constant fire, and explosions illuminated the void of space. Despite being outnumbered, the coordination between humans and Tarliks began to turn the tide. The Zarkons were formidable, but the unexpected strategies, courage, and adaptability of the human fleet gave them a chance. In quieter moments, the human crew reflected on the battle. Lena and Allie watched from the observation deck as flashes of energy lit up space. "This is more intense than anything we imagined," Lena whispered. "But look at them. The Tarliks are fighting alongside us. They're brave even after everything they've lost." Allie nodded. "And we can't let them down. Every life we save matters. This is why we came here, to protect, to help, and to prove that we can make a difference." The battle continued for hours. The Zarkons adapted, changing attack patterns and targeting vulnerable ships. The humans responded with new strategies, diverting power to shields, coordinating counterattacks, and using the environment, asteroid fields, debris, and planetary rings to their advantage. Each maneuver required split-second decision-making, trust in AI systems, and confidence in one another. Amid the chaos, a young pilot made a daring move. She veered her ship between two massive Zarkon vessels, drawing their fire while a group of human and Tarlik ships attacked from the side. The tactic worked, disabling one enemy ship and forcing another to retreat. Her bravery inspired the fleet, and the morale boost was palpable. In the midst of terror and destruction, human courage shone brightly. As night fell over the Tarliks world, the first wave of Zarkons was repelled. The fleet had sustained damage, and some ships were destroyed, but the Tarlik cities were saved and civilian casualties were minimal. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by the hum of engines and distant alarms from damaged vessels. The humans and Tarliks regrouped, tended to the injured, and reinforced defenses. Admiral Reyes addressed the fleet, his voice calm but filled with pride. "This is only the beginning. Today we faced overwhelming odds and stood our ground. We protected the innocent, demonstrated courage, and showed that strategy and unity can overcome fearsome power. But the Zarkons are still out there. We must remain vigilant, prepare for their return, and continue to stand with the Tarliks." In the aftermath, small acts of humanity stood out. Lena helped treat injured Tarlik civilians, using simple techniques and gestures to communicate. Allie assisted in repairing damaged communications equipment, ensuring that the Tarliks leaders could coordinate with the humans. Crews shared food and supplies with Tarlik survivors, creating bonds that transcended species and language. The battle had tested every member of the fleet. They had seen courage, loss, fear, and hope all in a single day. They had learned that space combat was not just about weapons and shields, but about teamwork, trust, and adaptability. And they had seen the first true signs of what it meant to be allies with an alien civilization. working together against a common enemy, sharing knowledge, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. As Part 4 came to a close, the fleet held position near the Tarlix world, battle-damaged but victorious. The Zarkons had retreated, but everyone knew it was only temporary. The enemy was adaptive, ruthless, and determined. The humans and Tarlix had won the first engagement, but the war was far from over. In the quiet moments, Lena looked out at the burning Tarlix cities below. "We did it," she said softly, though her voice carried sadness for what had been lost. Allie joined her. "Yes, but this is only the start. We'll have to fight again, and next time it may be even harder. But we're here and we're not giving up. We can't. Not for them. Not for ourselves." The stars beyond the Tarlix system sparkled as if unaware of the war raging below. But the humans and Tarlix knew the reality. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and full of challenges. Yet they had faced the first wave together, and that unity would be the foundation for everything to come. Admiral Rhea's final words for the day echoed across the fleet. "Today we proved ourselves. Tomorrow we prepare. Humanity has stepped into a larger universe, and we will continue to stand against any threat. We fight not for conquest, but for life, for hope, and for justice. We are the guardians now, and we will not falter." And so, as Part 4 ended, the fleet and the Tarlix began to rebuild, regroup, and prepare for the next inevitable attack. Courage, strategy, and hope had won the day. But the shadow of the Zarkons loomed closer than ever, promising more danger, more sacrifice, and more opportunities for heroism. The aftermath of the first battle left the fleet in a state of tense vigilance. Ships floated in orbit above the Tarlix world, their hulls scarred but still operational, engines humming softly. The humans and Tarlix had survived the initial onslaught of the Zarkons, but both sides knew it was only a matter of time before the enemy returned stronger and more determined. Admiral Reyes called a meeting with his senior officers in the command center. Holographic projections of the Zarkon fleet hovered above the table, displaying data collected from the first engagement. Every movement, every firing pattern, and every weak point of the enemy ships had been logged and analyzed. "We've learned a lot," Reyes said, his voice calm but firm. "The Zarkons are powerful, but they are not invincible. We've seen patterns in their attacks, predictable if we're clever enough. This is our chance to turn the tide." The first step was understanding the enemy's technology. Lena and Allie worked alongside Tarlix engineers, examining captured Zarkon drones and debris from destroyed ships. The Zarkons relied on highly concentrated energy systems, their weapons efficient but vulnerable to targeted disruption. A flaw became apparent. The power cores of their ships could be overloaded if attacked in precise sequences, causing catastrophic failures. "This is it," Lena said, pointing at a holographic readout. "If we target the cores in a coordinated strike, we could disable entire groups of their fleet at once. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to end this quickly." Allie nodded. "We'll need perfect timing and coordination. One mistake and we lose more ships than we can afford. But if it works, it could save the Tarlix homeworld." Admiral Reyes outlined the plan. The fleet would divide into specialized teams. Reconnaissance units would locate and track Zarkon ships, assault ships would strike the cores, and support units would protect civilians and Tarlix forces on the planet. Communication would be key. Every signal, every movement, and every decision had to be synchronized to the second. The Tarlix contributed valuable insight. They knew their world, the locations of critical population centers, and the best routes for evacuation. They also shared knowledge of hidden energy channels that could amplify the humans' attacks on the Zarkon's power cores. Trust had grown between the species and the cooperation was extraordinary. While preparations were underway, the human crew reflected on what had happened so far. Young pilots who had faced the first battle were now seasoned by experience. Engineers who had repaired ships under fire were more confident in their skills. And every crew member, from communications officers to medical teams, understood the stakes. They weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for an entire civilization. Captain Rahim led a squadron in reconnaissance missions, carefully tracking the Zarkon's movements. They observed patterns in the enemy fleet's behavior, noting weak points and timing sequences. Each day the humans and Tarlix worked together, simulating attacks and refining strategies. The risk was enormous, but the potential reward was survival for millions. On the ground, Tarlik's forces prepared defensive positions. Civilians were moved to secure locations and energy shields were reinforced around the most vulnerable cities. The humans helped, installing emergency communication systems and guiding evacuation procedures. Each small success built confidence and morale. The turning point came when Lena discovered something extraordinary in the Zarkon communication patterns. There was a delay in the synchronization of their energy cores, a fraction of a second that could be exploited. "This is the window," she said excitedly. "It's small, but it's enough. If the assault teams hit at exactly the right moment, we could trigger a chain reaction that disables their ships." Admiral Reyes smiled, a rare expression in the midst of war. "Then that is what we will do. Prepare the fleet. Tonight we strike at the heart of their strength." The human and Tarlik's crews moved with precision. Every ship, every pilot, and every weapon system was aligned for the mission. The assault ships took positions near the outer edges of the Zarkon fleet, shields at full power, engines running silently to avoid detection. Reconnaissance units fed real-time data to the command center, guiding each move. As darkness fell over the Tarlik's world, the fleet launched its attack. The first strike was subtle but devastating. Assault ships fired at the Zarkon's power cores with precise timing, exploiting the brief delay discovered by Lena. Energy surges raced through enemy ships, causing explosions that lit up space in dazzling bursts of color. Shockwaves rattled nearby vessels, but careful coordination ensured that human and Tarlik ships were clear. The Zarkons were caught off guard. Their attacks faltered, and many ships experienced catastrophic failures. Explosions tore through their ranks and confusion spread rapidly. The humans pressed the advantage, striking relentlessly while keeping civilians safe and avoiding unnecessary damage. On the ground, the Tarliks watched as the tide of battle shifted. They had feared that the humans' first engagement was their only hope, but now, with the coordinated strike, the Zarkons were losing their momentum. Civilians cheered cautiously, still wary of the destructive potential of the enemy, but hopeful that the end of the conflict might be near. Captain Rahim led a daring maneuver, weaving his squadron through the chaos to deliver a decisive blow to a Zarkon command vessel. Explosions rocked the ship and its systems failed completely, leaving the remaining Zarkons disoriented. The humans' precision, courage, and ingenuity had turned the tables. Throughout the battle, small acts of heroism stood out. A pilot saved a Tarlik's evacuation shuttle from destruction by diverting her ship into the line of fire, taking damage herself but ensuring the safety of dozens of civilians. Engineers repaired critical shield systems in the midst of combat, keeping assault ships operational. Medical teams worked tirelessly, treating both human and Tarlik's casualties even as explosions rattled the station. By the end of the engagement, the Zarkon fleet was in full retreat. Their numbers had been decimated, their coordination disrupted, and their morale shattered. The humans and Tarliks had achieved what many thought impossible. They had turned the tide of the battle, securing safety for the Tarliks' homeworld and proving that courage, intelligence, and cooperation could overcome even the most fearsome enemy. Admiral Reyes addressed the fleet. "Today we showed that strategy, unity, and courage can defeat even overwhelming odds. We have saved lives, protected a civilization, and proven that humanity can stand as a guardian in this galaxy. But we must remain vigilant. The Zarkons may return and the fight is not yet over. For now we celebrate our victory, but tomorrow we prepare for whatever comes next." On the ground, Tarlik's leaders expressed their gratitude. They had witnessed humans risking everything to save their people. Children laughed cautiously as they played in safer zones, and families began to rebuild homes with guidance from the humans. The bond between the two species had deepened and mutual respect was strong. In quieter moments, crew members reflected on the battle. Lena stood with Ali, watching the Tarliks repairing damaged structures and tending to survivors. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it," Ali nodded, but his eyes were distant. "Yes, we won today, but the galaxy is bigger than we imagined. There are always more challenges ahead. We've learned how to fight together, and that's what will keep us alive next time." Captain Rahim looked at his pilots and crew, proud of their courage. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and death, yet each one had risen to the occasion. The mission had tested every skill, every instinct, and every ounce of bravery they possessed. And they had succeeded. The Tarlik's world was quiet for the first time in weeks. Fires had been contained, evacuation zones were secure, and the fleet held protective positions in orbit. It was a moment of respite, a chance to recover, regroup, and reflect on what had been accomplished. Admiral Reyes walked the decks, acknowledging crew members individually. Every effort mattered, every life mattered. Humanity had shown it could extend beyond its own planet, into a galaxy filled with danger to protect others. The mission was far from over, but the first true victory had been won. As Part 5 ended, the fleet and the Tarlik stood together, victorious but wary. The Zarkons had been dealt a significant blow, but they were not gone. Humanity had discovered the strength of cooperation, the power of strategy, and the courage of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. And as the stars twinkled silently beyond the Tarlik system, every human and Tarlix knew that they had begun a new chapter in galactic history, a chapter that they would write together. The first hope had been secured, the enemy weakened, and the bond between species strengthened. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, and new tests of courage. But for tonight, humanity could rest knowing that their bravery had made a real difference, and that the Tarlik civilization would survive because humans had answered the call when it mattered most. The Tarlik's world was quieter now. Fires had been put out, damaged ships had been repaired, and the surviving population was beginning to rebuild. From orbit, the human fleet watched over the planet, maintaining vigilance, but for the first time in weeks there was a sense of calm. It was a calm built from hard-earned victory, but a calm nonetheless. Admiral Reyes walked along the main deck of the flagship, observing the crew at work. Ships were being refitted, weapons were checked, shields tested, and communication systems strengthened. Every person, from the youngest cadet to the most senior officer, knew that vigilance was still necessary. The Zarkons might have retreated, but they were still out there, and humanity could not afford to become complacent. On the Tarlik surface, humans worked side by side with the locals to rebuild homes and infrastructure. The Tarliks were skilled engineers and technicians, but many of their systems had been destroyed in the initial attacks. The humans lent their knowledge, helping to repair energy grids, reinforce shields, and restore vital communication networks. It was painstaking work, but every repaired system, every restored building felt like a victory. Lena moved between groups of Tarlik's engineers, checking energy readings and offering advice. She noticed a small child watching the work, eyes wide with curiosity. Kneeling down, she smiled and explained in gestures how the machines worked. The child's laughter was a small but powerful reminder of what they were fighting for: life, hope, and the chance to grow up safely in a world free from fear. Ali worked on the fleet sensors, calibrating them to detect any Zarkon return. "We've learned a lot from the last battles," he said. "Their technology is advanced, but predictable if you know where to look. We can anticipate attacks now and protect the planet more effectively." Captain Rahim trained pilots for potential future engagements. Even though the immediate threat had been weakened, every crew member understood that the Zarkons were clever and persistent. Flight exercises continued. Weapon systems were tested and emergency maneuvers were rehearsed. There was no room for carelessness. Readiness was survival. The Tarlik's leaders expressed their gratitude repeatedly. They held ceremonies, gave public acknowledgments, and shared their knowledge of the planet's hidden resources with the humans. Trust had grown into friendship. The Tarliks had learned from the humans just as much as the humans had learned from them. They shared traditions, simple meals, and stories of their history, teaching the humans about the beauty of their culture. In quieter moments, crew members reflected on their experiences. Young pilots who had faced their first real combat missions were no longer inexperienced cadets. Engineers who had repaired ships under fire now moved with confidence and precision. Every person had changed, shaped by fear, courage, and responsibility. Humanity had proven it could extend beyond its own world, facing dangers that no one on Earth could have imagined. One evening, Lena and Ali sat together on the observation deck, watching the Tarlik cities glow softly in the night. "It's strange," Lena said. "We came here to fight, to save lives, and now we're helping rebuild." "It feels different, but also right," Ali nodded. "Yes, we've seen what courage can do, and now we see what compassion can do. Saving lives isn't just about fighting. It's about building something that lasts." The human fleet also began mapping the Tarlik system for future exploration and defense. Sensors scanned planets, asteroids, and moons looking for resources and safe zones. They worked to establish permanent communication links between Earth and the Tarlik system, ensuring that help could arrive quickly if needed again. Every calculation, every adjustment was a step toward long-term security. Meanwhile, small groups of humans explored the planet with the Tarliks, learning about its ecosystems, wildlife, and landscapes. The Tarliks were eager to share their knowledge, teaching humans how to navigate dangerous areas, locate natural resources, and understand the unique properties of their energy systems. It was more than science, it was a cultural exchange that deepened understanding and respect between the two species. Even leisure moments became meaningful. Crew members shared meals with Tarlik's families, swapped stories, and played games with children who had lost so much yet still found joy. The bonds formed in these moments were as important as any military victory. They built trust, reinforced hope, and reminded everyone why they had fought. Despite the calm, vigilance remained. Sensors occasionally picked up anomalies, faint energy signatures that could indicate returning Zarkons. Patrols continued in orbit and on the planet's surface. The humans had learned that peace in a galaxy filled with danger was never permanent. Preparedness, strategy, and adaptability would always be necessary. Admiral Reyes held another meeting with senior officers. "The Zarkons are weakened but not defeated," he said. "We have gained trust, built alliances, and strengthened defenses. The Tarlik system is safer now, but our mission continues. We are guardians, not conquerors. We must maintain readiness and continue learning from our experiences. Humanity has proven itself capable of standing against incredible odds. Let's ensure we continue to be worthy of that trust." On the ground, Tarlik's children ran through repaired streets, laughter echoing through the city. Elder Tarliks walked cautiously but with pride, helping to rebuild their homes and sharing knowledge with humans. The first signs of recovery were visible everywhere. Gardens began to grow, energy systems hummed steadily, and small markets reopened. Life was returning to the planet, fragile but resilient. Captain Rahim oversaw training exercises, not just for combat, but for cooperation. Humans and Tarliks practiced together, learning how to respond to emergencies, coordinate defenses, and manage resources efficiently. Every exercise, every drill, reinforced the alliance and prepared them for potential future challenges. The fleet also began documenting their experiences. Engineers, scientists, and historians worked together to create detailed records of the battles, strategies, and interactions. This was knowledge for the future, a record of humanity's first extended engagement beyond Earth, of the friendships and alliances formed, and of the lessons learned from both triumph and tragedy. In quieter moments, crew members allowed themselves reflection. Some wrote letters to their families on Earth, describing not just the battles but also the lives saved, the friendships formed, and the beauty of a world they had helped protect. Others took time to remember fallen comrades, honoring their courage and sacrifice. Every memory reinforced the sense of purpose that had driven them through the war. As days turned into weeks, the Tarlik's world grew stronger. Repaired ships began patrolling the skies, energy shields expanded, and civilians returned to their daily routines. The humans remained a vigilant presence, but their roles shifted gradually from combatants to mentors, advisors, and friends. Lena and Ali worked with Tarlik's engineers to develop a communication network that would allow instant contact with Earth. "This will ensure help can arrive faster than ever before," Ali said. "It's not just about technology, it's about trust, about knowing that someone will be there when you need them." Even as peace settled, the humans never forgot the danger that still existed. Patrols continued, training remained constant, and contingency plans were in place for any return of the Zarkons. Humanity had learned that survival required courage, intelligence, and preparation, and that trust and alliance were as powerful as any weapon. Admiral Reyes walked the decks one evening, looking out at the Tarlik cities below. He saw the lights of homes, the movement of people, and the quiet energy of recovery. He felt pride in the crew, in humanity, and in the bonds they had formed with the Tarliks. "We've done more than fight," he said quietly. "We've protected lives, built alliances, and shown what humanity is capable of. And this is only the beginning." As Part 6 came to a close, the Tarlik system stood as a symbol of survival, courage, and cooperation. Humans and Tarlix had faced incredible danger together, fought side by side and emerged stronger. The bonds formed in battle had grown into friendships, respect, and shared purpose. The stars beyond the Tarlix system sparkled, silent witnesses to the trial's victories, and hope of two civilizations that had learned to trust and protect one another. And though the galaxy remained vast and filled with unknown dangers, humanity had proven itself capable, not just of war but of compassion, alliance, and heroism. As the humans prepared to return to Earth or continue exploring other systems, they carried with them knowledge, experience, and the understanding that courage and cooperation could overcome even the darkest threats. The Tarlix had survived, and humanity had shown that when the call for help came from across the stars, they would answer without hesitation. The future was uncertain, the challenges immense, but hope had been restored, and in that hope, humanity and the Tarlix found the strength to continue, together, in a galaxy that had once seemed so indifferent, now a place where courage, trust, and unity could make a difference.